Hello, everyone, once again, and welcome back to Memoirs of the Father. I am your host, the Father, Alex Burnham. I just want to apologize for the delay I've had in getting this video out. I have been battling food poisoning for the last 3 days because my girlfriend made chicken fajita nachos and tried to kill me and everyone in the house. So we're currently, I've been working on that for the last several days. My house is an absolute mess. We watched High School Nationals this weekend, which of course takes course over 4 days now. Then that rolled right into me getting sick. And then, my house is a mess. I've got so much stuff I need to do. So I've been putting this off because I wanted to get to a point where I felt well enough to actually sit down and talk about. Now I'm going to split this High School Nationals review up into two parts. Today I'm going to do Super Varsity Division 1 and 2, Small Coed Division 1 and 2, and Large Varsity Coed Division 1 and 2. And then in the future, I will do small, medium, and large all-girl divisions 1 and 2. Like I said, I don't really do junior high. I don't really do middle school, non-tumbling, game day, non-building, none of that stuff. I'm very much a traditional guy. That's what my preference is. That's what I enjoyed watching. And then when you take into account that, there's so much going on every single day to be able to sit down there and watch them. You need the music, you need the crowd response, you need all that stuff to accurately give your interpretation to really see. It's always harder to see what the judges see on video. There's a drastic difference in being in person and being able to view these things and see them with your own eyes. There's another layer, there's another depth, and being able to feel the energy in the room and feel the performance. That doesn't always come across very, very clear on television or, watching the streams and stuff like that. So that's why I really only stick to those. It's just too hard to watch everybody. But we're going to start our day off looking at those, and then I'm still planning to get with Caleb. We were supposed to get together today and sit down and film the 2018 season at McCracken County High School. We will probably have to get together next week and do that, or we might squeeze some time in and crunch it out. I don't know. I got to get together and talk with him. But we were planning to do that today. I've just been terribly sick for the last 3 days. So today we're going to go ahead and get right into it. Let's start with our Super Varsity Division 2. Now, the Division 2 Super Varsity is not a super big division. There's a few teams, and these teams are pretty close together in score points. So let's look at what took place in the preliminary round. There's only 2 rounds, prelims and finals for the super large, because there's just not, like I said, there's just not a large super large teams. So coming out of semis, in third place we had Athens, and they had an 83.7. They had some mistakes. St. Thomas was in second. They had an 84.3. Also had some mistakes. And then Bowling Green High School scored an 84.5, and they hit. When I looked at this and I saw most of the teams made mistakes except for Bowling Green. I think Bowling Green was the only team that got away with a zero, hit zero. So when I looked at this, they're only ahead by 0.2 points. Now, what's the thing? How does this team have 3 mistakes and be ahead, only be behind by 0.2 points? The big story here for Bowling Green, the thing that I think that kept them from winning, is probably their numbers were really poor in comparison. They look like a large all-girl team, not a super large team. They did 6 stunts a few times, but most of the time it was primarily 5. 5 of the hardest thing they could do, 5 of this, and then if there was a 6th stunt, it was kind of an add-in. Like, if, these guys did the hand-in-hand to platform, and then someone just went up, or they did a switch up to stretch, and someone else just jumped into the stretch. So that was really the big key for them, I felt like, is that they were small in comparison to a lot of these teams. But they hit. And that's the key, is that you have to hit. I thought their execution was pretty good, especially better than a lot of the other teams, obviously, that had mistakes. But even going into finals, I thought that Bowling Green had better execution. It wasn't great, but it was better than most other teams. But the thing that hindered them the most here was their size. They just didn't have the numbers. St. Thomas and Athens both put up 7 stunts multiple times throughout their routine. Bowling Green never went over 6, and they didn't do 6 all the time. Their tumbling was weak. The tumbling across this division was pretty weak. You had a mix of standing tucks with like some handsprings, or people would do round off tucks. There's just a lot of people there was not a lot of synchronization between the tumbling passes. So not everybody did a standing tuck. Not everybody did a round off tuck. There was mix and match. Obviously there's always people that aren't in them, and that's not what I'm griping on. My griping on is like, why would you put some handsprings with some tuck? Like, you're trying to fool somebody, but I feel like that works against you more times than not. But you have to be able to put out the routines. Like I said, I thought tumbling was definitely the weak area in this division throughout. Not a lot of numbers, but when you're putting that many people out there in your Division II schools, so your smaller schools, you're kind of just putting people out there to get your stunts in the air. And like I said, this is definitely gravitated more to being a stunt and pyramid division, or not just this division, all divisions. It's much more about the stunts and the pyramids than it is about the tumbling at this point. So, in third place coming out of finals was Bowling Green High School. They got an 86.9, so they scored 2.4 points higher than they did the first time around. And it was performed. There's a little bit of pressing, a little bit of saving, nothing like real bad. But then St. Thomas comes in with an 87.4, which is a 3.4 change. Now, obviously, they still had some mistakes, if I recall correctly. I don't have it all written down here on my notes, but they definitely still had something. And then Athens comes in with an 89.4 to win. They did not have any mistakes. I believe that they hit 0. So they went from third place from 83.7 to 89.4. It's a little under a 6-point change from prelims to finals. So what does that tell you? Mistakes affect you in a lot of different ways. They hurt your stunt difficulty because obviously you can't get credit for something that you don't hit. They hurt your stunt execution. They hurt the way that your overall routine is impacted, the view, your energy, your flow, all these things. Mistakes are not just hitting you in one category, okay? They're spreading them out, and these judges are really handing out some pretty heavy penalties for you making mistakes, not just the deductions, what they're doing on the execution. That was the story in this division. Size, execution, difficulty, and it all kind of melted in somewhere. Because I thought Bowling Green had the best execution in finals. The problem was they just didn't have the size. They did have difficulty too. I mean, I thought that their opening sequence, their elite, I thought it was harder than what anybody else did. But they only did 5 of them. And then you turn around, Athens does 7 back handspring ups. Well, 7's going to beat 5. I don't care how hard 5 is, 7's going to beat 5 at that point. I don't disagree with any of this at all. I felt pretty comfortable with the way that they handled this. These were pretty accurate, I felt like. And these teams are all pretty close together. So, like I said, if Bowling Green is going to continue to be a super large team, then they're going to have to start putting up more stunts in the air. Otherwise, I like I said, when I looked at them, I felt like they would have been better off in large, just based on their size. Now, I don't necessarily know if that's true. We'll review large going forward. I don't necessarily think they would have done any better. But in this case, Bowling Green was waiting for people to make mistakes, and they were just going to be clean and be ready. Now, does that mean maybe there's injuries, maybe there's stuff like that? I don't really know the whole story. But that was, to me, the biggest thing, and why Bowling Green couldn't win this was their numbers. And it wasn't drastically different. I mean, they're only 0.5 behind getting into second place, but then there's a 2-point gap to finals, to the championship team. But like I said, overall, I agree with this. I'm not disappointed or anything in these results at all. These are some good performances. They weren't the cleanest. This is a little rough, but that's kind of going to be the story. Is there's a lot of roughness that we're going to talk about throughout these videos today, especially across some of these divisions. But now let's go to Super Varsity Division 1. And in 5th place, we had Lake Mary. They scored an 87.2. They had 3 points in deductions. Westlake scores an 87.2. Mountain View is in 3rd with an 88.1. And Brentwood is in 2nd place with a 90.2. So there's only a 3-point gap between 2nd and 5th. And like I said, they had the Lake Mary was in 5th and they had 3 points in deductions. So this is pretty close, right? Sounds pretty reasonable. And then you have your 1st place team, Live Oak, who scores a 95. Blows everybody out of the water. They hit 0. Honestly, 2 through 5, Brentwood, Mountain View, Westlake, Lake Mary, these teams are all really competitive amongst each other. These are all good routines. They're really solid routines all the way throughout. They have good numbers, good size. There's good tumbling. These teams are very, very competitive. Live Oak is just better. Live Oak, everything that every one of these teams did, Live Oak did a harder variation of it. And I'm not talking like, they did a back handspring up, so they did a back handspring up immediate. They did, 7 full defeat, which is harder than anything anybody else did. 7 back handspring up to immediates. 7 front handspring ups. Front handspring full up pyramids, 4 of them. Great tumbling, great performance, great execution. That's the thing, is that their difficulty was so much higher than everybody's, and then their execution was on a level that most people couldn't come close to. And that'll become even more apparent as this goes on. Excuse me, those were the finals results. That's what I meant to say. Those were the finals results. So in semis, I apologize for messing this up. In fifth place was Mountain View. They had an 84.6. So they went up to third place, 88.1 in final. And then they had some deductions in semifinals. Kind of the same story. You see what I'm saying? There's almost a 3.5 point difference. So it's not just the deduction here. It's the execution, it's the way that they're getting hit, the overall impression of the routine, where you have those mistakes at. And then Brentwood was in fourth place in preliminary round. They had an 86.4 after 2 points of deductions. And then in finals, they scored a 90.2. Westlake was in third place with an 85.7 in semis, and they fell to fourth place with an 87.7. They did better, scored higher, and went lower down the grade. But that's a testament. All these teams are really close, and they're kind of chipping away. When you start having mistakes, you don't always necessarily get a clear interpretation of what. So if you're in first and the team behind you has a deduction and it's within a 2 point range, you're in trouble of getting beat by somebody. If that team clutches up and hits the routine. That's the story here, okay? You have to understand, you're not just getting hit for deductions. Your raw scores are getting impacted by making mistakes. You're losing on execution. You're losing on stunt difficulty. You're losing on the flow and energy of your routine, the overall interpretation of your routine. It is getting hurt by these mistakes. It is not a 1 point deduction. It is a punch right in the gut of what you're trying to do. In second place was Lake Mary. They had an 87.5. They had the 3 mistakes in finals. They fell to the 87.2 to fifth place. And then Live Oak in semis scored a 94.3, and then they turned around and scored a 95 in finals. This is pretty cut and dry. This was Live Oak. This was Live Oak's division. This was Live Oak's choice to win. I think they would have won with a drop. I don't think there's there's too big of a gap. I mean, they still had a 5 point lead over Brentwood, which, I mean, if all these teams had hit, I don't think Brentwood would have been. It probably would have been Lake Mary, just judging at these scores, who would have been in second place. But even then, I mean, there's just such a huge disparity between what Live Oak was capable. I mean, you needed them to make mistakes and to find other ways to kind of chip around. So that was, like I said, I don't have a problem with that. Live Oak they hit one of the hardest routines that you're ever going to see for a long time. It's the hardest routine that's ever been done in high school nationals as of right now. If anybody's going to top it, it'll be them. And when or if that happens, we'll wait to see. But this was very impressive all the way throughout. There were some other teams that did skills similar. Ravenwood, did the full defeat. They did the back handspring pull-ups. But the size and the volume here is undeniable. That's absolutely impressive. Hats off to Live Oak. Another national championship. So let's switch gears now and let's go to Small Coed Division 2. Now, this division is pretty interesting. Last year was the first year that they did Small Coed D2. They had one, it was probably around 2011, 2012, 2013, I think, for that 3-year period. We had a Small Coed Division 2. And over the course of those 3 years, 3 different teams won that national championship. Archbishop Shaw won the first one, then Reedland High School, and then Bullitt East won the last one, those 3. And then it phased out when they decided to do the small, medium, and large. So this is the second time that we're having Small Coed Division 2 brought out. Now, last year, Barron County won, and they were the national champions. They were defending national champions going into this. But you can look at, when a division's in its early stages like this, who is going to reach out and grab a hold of it? What's the identity? What's the look of what is going to be? Usually the first champion kind of has the chance to set the tone of what that division is going to look like. You go back to the medium co-ed division when that just came into place. The first year who won McCracken, second year New Oxford, third year Fleming Island. 3 different programs. You go back to look at super large, there was Bartow, there was Dyer. 3-year program. So these things kind of flip a lot until someone really gets a grip. So going into this, I feel like this division is pretty wide open, and then you also have the advantage of the medium co-ed division is now gone. So some teams are going to drop down instead of going up. It just depends on your fluctuation of guys, your fluctuation of girl talent. And in this case, I felt like it created a very interesting dynamic because this division feels very open. So let's look at this. This small co-ed division 2 features a lot of teams with some big names. So Archbishop Rummel, Archbishop Shaw, both of them have been around for a long. Rummel's been coming for a while. I remember competing against them with McCracken in the medium co-ed division, and they're always that team that's right there on the door. They've come close. They've got second place before. They've been on the verge of winning like a traditional national championship. I think they do have a game day one, but they've been on the verge of doing this for a while. So they were a team that, last year I thought that they were a very competitive team. The last couple years, they've looked really, really good in medium. It's just an execution issue. But obviously, when you look at the names that are on the sheet, they're the most prominent one that I see right now. And then Archbishop Shaw, who's won. They're not the most consistent at winning, but they're a program that's been around since the beginning. I think they were one of the very first national champions way back when in small co-ed. They won, obviously, they won in Division II about a decade ago. And then here they are again with another chance to win. So let's look at these semi-scores here. We had in fourth place was Archbishop Shaw. They had an 84.9 1-point deduction. And then you had Saltillo High School. They had an 86.7 in third. So there's a little bit of a gap here. But like I said, there's the deduction and there's the spacing. And that's going to come into play later. Then we had Woodford County. They had an 87.6. They were in second place. And then Archbishop Rummel was in first place with an 88.2, and they had a 1-point deduction. My first thoughts when I watched this preliminary round is that this was Archbishop Rummel's to win. It was not close, in my opinion. They scored this really close, but I disagree with that. But we'll get into why this was scored so closely. Archbishop Rummel had size. 4 co-ed back handspring ups, 4 co-ed hand-in-hands. They had their guys. They put up more than 3 stunts. They were mostly unassisted. They looked, their preliminary performance was pretty good. They did have the 1 drop, but the preliminary performance was pretty good. I felt comfortable that as long as they did what they were supposed to do in finals, they were going to walk out the national champion. And I think the scores indicate that. I mean, obviously they were in first place with a deduction. So if you go out there and you hit, you're going to beat most of these teams. There's too big of a gap. You're not going to recover 3.5 points off 1 drop. You're not going to. But the problem ended up being something very different. So let's get into what finals looks like here. In fourth place, Saltillo had dropped from third to fourth, but they scored a little bit higher. They scored an 86.8, but they had a deduction. So why are these teams scoring higher with mistakes? Well, here's some of what it is. When you go for prelims, how many teams are in this division? There was a lot. I mean, it wasn't as big as small co-ed 1, but there was a lot of teams. So you're watching these teams, it's integrating in between divisions. You might have 10, 15 minutes in between the 2 teams that you're judging. And if you got 20 teams, obviously you can see it takes a long time. You might forget what somebody looked like in the beginning. But when they do these scores and they do this placement, when you go into finals, everybody is followed in order. So ideally, in a perfect world, the next team should always score higher. Ideally, in a perfect world, if you got the scores right. But obviously some teams are going to do better, some teams are going to do worse. But that's one of the reasons why these scores are higher. They're able to grade up instead of having to tame themselves because they know the next team is going to be better. So they know where to leave their room. And if somebody has a really great performance or you know what's coming, you can score these teams, you can give the appropriate amount of room. Do you understand what I'm saying? You have time to digest. You know someone better is coming. The first time around, you have no clue what's coming. You have no clue how often someone's coming that you think is going to be worthy of being in a championship conversation. With this format, you already have had that conversation, and now you're just comparing the top teams back to back to back. It makes your job a whole lot easier. I really do like this and the way that they're going about this judging. I definitely think this, and it saves you the time from the draw. You don't have to think about it. You don't have to worry about it. There's no pressure there. You kind of have an idea of where you're going to go, almost off of where your performance is to begin with. So that, like I said, I think that's a great thing. And then we had Archbishop Rummel came in third place here. They had a couple mistakes. And this was, like I said, this was theirs to win. They scored an 86.9 with 2 points in deductions. I mean, if you give them just the 2 points in deductions, they're going to score higher than they did the first time. They'd have won, just not dropping. Even if nothing else was better, you didn't change their execution score. If they don't drop, they win. They drop a back handspring up in the beginning. They're lucky they didn't get called on the toss lib in the opening as well. And then they also dropped a hand-in-hand. The execution was pretty poor outside of these stunts. I mean, in that opening, obviously the one guy drops, and then the other stunts are magnificent. The pyramids are okay, but throughout the rest of the stunts, there's a lot of fighting, there's a lot of pressing, there's a lot of saving, things going to the chest. Execution really hurt this team. Like I said, I thought that they were by far head and shoulders the best team in this division, but they did things that hurt you. It's very unfortunate, and I don't want to harp on it too much because they know. This was theirs. This was in their hands. Their fate was up to them, and they just dropped the ball. In second place, we had Archbishop Shaw, which scored an 87.4, which is quite a bit higher than what they did, but they still had a deduction here. Performance factor was really good. When you get a chance to look at these teams, watch how they performed during the cheer, watch how they performed during the music. I thought Shaw did a lot of really good things. They did have the one drop, but outside the drop, I thought they did some things really well. Decent amount of guys. I mean, they did 4 co-ed toss extensions. They had some back handspring ups. They had a good fluctuation. It was a little bit of a mix of co-ed and all-girl. I mean, they obviously didn't max those co-ed numbers out as much as possible. And then our national champion was Woodford County that scored an 87.5. And I don't want to be and say a team didn't deserve to win. I just don't agree with this outcome. I thought Shaw was better. I thought the difference in difficulty in stunts alone was very indicative of that. I didn't see... I mean, Woodford was primarily an all-girl team that had guys do hands extensions. And, they had some toss skills here and there, but this was primarily all-girl stunning with guys around the side, guys as back spots. I just didn't agree with this. I mean, they had a great execution, I guess. Looking at this, I just didn't feel like they hit the parts of the score sheet that you're supposed to. And I understand they hit, and that's good enough for me, to be honest with you. They hit their routine, and the other 3 teams did not. They all had deductions. So if that's what you want to go on, I have no problem with that. But that wasn't really the story throughout some of the other divisions, and that's what we're going to have to talk about too. That's going to have to be consistent across the board. So I don't have a problem with it from that perspective. They hit their routine. The other teams didn't. I just felt like there was a huge gap between them and stunts, between Shaw and Rummel, pyramids, all that stuff. I mean, the big meaty parts. But they hit. They had the execution. And like I said, Rummel was really sloppy. I thought Shaw should have won this with the drop. But I understand if you're going to do this, that's fine. I have no problem with that. To be honestly, that's the way I prefer it. The teams that hit should have the chance to win. Okay? But there was just a difference in difficulty here. But overall, like I said, I don't have a problem with that. If that's the direction that they want to go in, the teams that hit should win, that's fine. But as we're going to look at here in a second, that's not going to be the case across the board. This is going to be the beginning of some rougher conversations. The small Coed D1 worked out a little bit better, but the large Coed divisions were really rough. But yeah, like I said, I just didn't really agree with that. And obviously there was a conversation. This is a 0.1 difference, 87.5 to 87.4. This is a conversation. They sat down, and then Rummel's at 86.9. They're half a point behind. This is a conversation between who should have won. Now, I thought Rummel had the chance to win, but obviously I didn't think that they should because they had mistakes. And then Saltillo is also 86.8, so they're 0.1 behind Rummel. This whole thing was a conversation. Rummel, I thought, was the team that should win, but they had too many mistakes. And you can't let a team with 2 drops, even if they're that much better than everybody. You can't let a team with that many. And they weren't that much better than Shaw. They just had numbers. But I felt like, if Shaw had Rummel's numbers, I think they probably would have won with the drop. So, like I said, that's going to be the thing to look at, is that I don't feel like the team that won is going to give you a very clear vision of what you need to do going forward. I don't necessarily know if I would mimic and mock what they're trying to do if I wanted to be a national champion. But obviously this is a great win for them. They did their job. They came and they hit. They did what they were supposed to do. And it was clean. I just feel like you got to utilize your guys a little bit more, a little less on the all-girl end. And I don't have a problem with doing the all-girl. But this is co-ed division. The guys have got to start doing stuff. The girls were doing the pyramids. The guys were backs on it, for the most part. So, like I said, these things, UCA co-ed is going to need to be put on the score sheet somewhere at some point. So, but let's go from here and let's go to the money division this weekend. Small co-ed Division 1 was pretty impressive for the most part. A lot of history in this. Going into this, I pretty much picked Strawberry Crest based on the video that I'd seen at UCA Regionals. And their routine was pretty similar to that. They may have changed a couple things. For the most part, it was pretty similar to the one that they did at the UCA Regionals. And then I'd seen Blackman's as well. And Blackman's was either watered down or they really weren't taking it seriously because the routine they threw at Nationals was drastically different from what they threw at the regional competition. So let's get into this. There are so many small co-ed Division 1 teams. This is broken down into 2 preliminary brackets. The winners of each preliminary bracket advance straight to finals. Everybody else that advances has to go to semifinals and try to fight to get into finals. So let's look at this preliminary round here in prelim. Small Coed Division 1 prelim A. It was Blackman. They scored a 92.2. They were probably 5-6 points ahead of everybody else. This was Blackman. Okay. Nobody else has a chance. They did the full ups for co-ed. They did front handspring ups with all girls mimicking. They did 4 co-ed toss stretches. They had good pyramids. They had a ton of tumbling. Almost all the girls, except for like 4 of them, through fulls. Lots of really good stuff. Good energy. Their cheer was banging right out the gate. They did the things that you're supposed to do to be a champion. And their execution was pretty good. Like, they weren't really walking all over the mat. I thought in finals they executed better than they did in prelim. But obviously they get the nod here and they're going to go straight on through. Nobody else is close to them. Nobody else in this thing is even remotely in the ballpark here. In the preliminary B, we had in second place was Pearland High School. I think that's how you say it. It might be Pearland, but I'm going to call it Pearland. They had an 87.7, which is a drastic, it's about 3.5 point difference from Blackman's on the other end. And then Strawberry Crest scored an 89.4. I know they had a deduction, but they go on straight through the finals. So when I'm looking at this, 89.4 for Strawberry Crest and a 92.2 for Blackman, I know that Crest had a mistake. So I still feel pretty comfortable that Strawberry Crest can win this. When I'm looking at this, these are the 2 teams that I'm comparing to first. Because their scores are not compared against each other, because being in 2 different preliminary rounds puts them under 2 different judging panels. So A and B have 2 different sets of judges. So these 2 teams are not being compared to each other. So their scores can change depending on that, because now they're going to be compared head to head. So you might have been a 10 before, but you may not be a 10 now, because this team may be a 10 now. So that's the thing that they're going to have to look at. That's going to be the big question going into the final round. In the preliminary round, Pearland came out and won the preliminary round, or the semifinal round. Blackman and Strawberry Crest advanced straight through the finals. But there were some teams with some names that did not make it. Stewart's Creek, who I thought for sure would at least get to finals, they did not make it through the semifinal round. Fleming Island, teams that have a history of competing in Clay High School as well. They've got history at nationals, history competing. They placed high. These teams kind of fell out, and it became a story about execution. To me, it was really Blackman and Strawberry Crest. That was kind of the division that I had. So let's look at the final round. Now, I watched this live. Pearland High School went first of these 3, and they scored a 92.9. They hit the routine. I just was not a fan of their routine. They had 2 guys that were essentially... They had 4 guys on the floor. They had 2 guys that did a ton of work. And the 2 guys were impressive. They did flipping skills, they did pull-ups, but it was 2 guys. And the other guys were either just tumbling or they were backing all girl stunts. So they never put up more than like 2 or 3 co-ed stunts at any point during this routine. And that bothered me, because Strawberry Crest and Blackman both put up a lot more. And here's the argument, is that they had the same amount of guys. That's the key here, is that they could have put up the 3 co-ed stunts to meet the minimum requirement, and they didn't do that. But there were good individual skills. I just wasn't really a big fan of the routine. But obviously, I don't have to be a fan of it for it to hit the criteria on the score sheet. And this does, in some ways hit that criteria. Strawberry Crest went next, and like I said, a pretty similar routine to what they did at the regionals that I reviewed a few weeks back. Open with a cheer, another great performance. They have the toss stretches. They have a little bit of tumbling. And I think this is probably where they got exploited really bad, was the tumbling end. I definitely think, in comparison to the other teams, the amount of tumbling that was done here was a huge difference. Obviously, I haven't seen these score sheets. I don't know. But just from looking at it, that's what I would assume. And Strawberry Crest had added a little bit more into that running section, those fulls that were coming to the front. But I don't know if they added all fulls or some layouts in there. But to me, that was the big thing that hurt them. And they dropped as well. They did the hand-in-hand, the back handspring up sequence that was all together with a really great transition. Loved that. It looks good. They had one mistake there. But the rest of the routine looked good. I mean, there was a huge difference in the execution level from this one, from the regionals that was back in November. If you go back and watch the 2, you'll be very, very impressed. Like I said, there was a lot of good stuff here, but they had the drop. So the door is pretty much open at this point, as I saw it for Blackman with the mistake. And they're going to need some help here going into this. But I thought a lot of stuff was really, really good. But the tumbling for sure was an area that hurt them. The stunt drop hurts, but I thought the tumbling, in my opinion, is what prevented them from placing higher in this, even with the mistakes. And then Blackman High School comes out and they stroke their routine. Like it's not nothing. Full ups, the front handspring up sequence, toss stretches, all the fulls, the tumbling, the great, the pyramids, all this stuff is so good. They did their job. Blackman High School ends up winning this with a 95.1. Big difference in score from their preliminary round. But at this point, you know, they're the last team that went. You don't have to hold back on their score. If you think that they're this, then you have no problem scoring them that. And that's exactly what happened here. They deserve to win. Blackman absolutely had the best routine. They had the best performance. They did what they were supposed to do. And because of that, they are now, I believe, 11-time national champions. So, yeah, that's a pretty good run for them. Pearland got second with a 92.9, and then Strawberry Crest came in third with a 92.6. I don't necessarily know if I agree with Strawberry Crest getting third. I thought that they should get second. Obviously, I understand that there's a mistake, but, I don't feel comfortable with that. Honestly, I thought Strawberry Crest had way more difficulty. I thought Strawberry Crest took way more chances. They had more guys on the floor. They put more stunts in the air. Even if you look at the Coed all-girl ratio, Strawberry Crest still put more stunts in the air. They had a better cheer. I thought, I just didn't agree with this, but if you're going to go with the idea that, okay, well, these teams hit, so they should be ahead, they don't have a problem with that. I just want that to be consistent across the board, because what we're getting ready to talk about, that's not going to happen anymore. Could Strawberry Crest have won this if they hit? I mean, the scores are pretty far apart. I mean, if they get the deduction back, they scored 93.6. Could they cover a point and a half? In overall and execution, maybe a point. I think this probably would have been about a half a point difference, and it looks like Blackman was probably going to win. If I'm comparing this, obviously, Strawberry Crest had the two inversions. They had the hand-to-hand and the back handspring up. But the front handspring up that Blackman did is harder than both of those inversions. Now, they did two of them, but Blackman also did a full up. So if I was to say a hand-in-hand is just right above a full up on the score sheet. So those are, and then a front handspring up is just above a back handspring up. So it probably scratches out, evens out. They both did the stretches. Blackman having less assistance probably swung that in their favor. So when I look at these, like I said, the tumbling, Blackman for sure had to exploit them in tumbling because they threw a ton of fulls. They had lots of people doing standing tucks. They had people doing the fulls, the cheer, the energy. The cheers cut probably would have been close. I feel like the tumbling and maybe a slight edge in the stunts probably is what blew this up. And then obviously with the drop and the execution, that really blew that up. So I think Blackman probably would have won no matter what with their performance. But, great routines from all three, honestly. Like I said, I wasn't a fan of Pearland's routine, but that doesn't excuse the fact that it checks the boxes. It hits everything on the score sheet that it's supposed to. If you're someone that's looking at these divisions, you're like, how can I be competitive? Be clean and hit what you can. That's it. That's the story. And just try to get better every single year. So for them, that's what they're going to have to look at. Like I said, the next few years of this is going to be interesting. I think this is probably going to be a similar story. If some of these teams with some history, like the Stewart's Creeks and the Clays, they start getting to rolling, and they can get their name up here in the bucket, maybe this division kind of opens up a little bit more. But right now, I would kind of expect it going forward to be Blackman, Strawberry Crest. Pearland, I've not known them very much or very well, but they've been a team whose name I've heard. It's not like a surprise to me or anything. So I think they could be a team that's potentially up there in the future going forward. But, overall, pretty great competition. Blackman had a great routine. I absolutely think that they deserve to win. So let's move on to the big ones and the ones that are going to hurt me emotionally. So let's start off here with Large Coed Division 1 because this took place before the Division 2. The preliminary round was on Saturday, and I did sit down and watch all this, and boy, was I pleasantly surprised by some of these results. Coming out of the preliminary round, it's the semifinals. There is no prelims. It's semis and finals for these large co-ed teams because there's a pretty good number of them. Only so many are going to get through the finals. I think it was like 8, but there was a pretty good number, which surprised me because large co-ed the last few years had just dwindled down so low. And then you got 2 divisions now that are both bigger than divisions that you've had in the past. So I am happy to see that. So this one is pretty much headlined by McCracken, Bartow, Hudson. Those are the prominent teams that have been close to the top or have won in the past. So I was pleasantly surprised. And honestly, even from top to bottom, the difficulty of this was pretty good. Seminole Ridge was in like 6th place, and I watched the routine. I was like, this is really not that bad, for a team that I wasn't very familiar with. But let's look at this. So we got Bartow High School came in 5th place. They had an 89. I was a little surprised that they scored low. maybe not that their score was an 89. I think I was surprised that they came in 5th place. They did not have the difficulty that they normally do. I will acknowledge that. They had size, and they had numbers, and they did a lot of co-ed stunts. I mean, they put some stunts in the air, well above the 5 minimum requirement. I mean, the only time they did 5 was on the hand-in-hand. I question this a lot. I question them being in 5th place quite a bit. Birmingham got 4th. They had a 90.1, so it's just 1.1 better. Bentonville also had a 90.1. They were in 3rd. Or maybe I've got my score sheets wrong here. It's not going to matter. This is the semi-round. Hudson was in 2nd place with a 90.9, and then McCracken was in 1st place with a 94. They had a 1-point deduction that put them in a 93. So let's look at these routines here. I really didn't watch Birmingham. I was surprised that they were where they were in 4th. I think I went back and watched them later. I saw them in finals, and they had a rough go in finals. Bentonville was a pretty easy routine in comparison to McCracken and Hudson's, and really in some ways in comparison to Bartow's. But they were pretty clean. I mean, it was they had good numbers, they had good size, but you could tell it was like a hands extension, toss extension. They did do an inversion. I think they did like a round off up to hands. So there's a small drop, obviously, in the difficulty from what you're going to see from Hudson and McCracken here. But I thought their execution was pretty good. I think that was probably one of the reasons why they were placing so high is because of how clean they were. And then Hudson came in, like I said, Hudson came in 2nd with that 90.9. They did hit. They're a little bit ahead of Bentonville here. I think there was a little bit of slop, a little bit in this first run through because they did do better and, well, debatable. They scored the same in finals just about. But the thing here was they had the really creative sequence to get into the hand-in-hand. They had good skills, toss libs. They had handspring ups. There was a really good routine. They had good tumbling, good mix. There was a lot of stuff in this team was really good, but they felt small. That was the thing here. They were around that 5 or 4 range. They really never did more than 5 co-ed stunts at any given time. I feel like those were the things that hurt them specifically. But they were a good team. They're absolutely a good team. This is a great routine. Problem was McCracken was massive. Huge in comparison to everybody else. They open up with damn near squad standing tucks. A couple guys in the front did standing fulls. I think there was 2 guys in the back, maybe one that didn't. But, I mean, when you come out with that big a volume of people throwing one specific skill, that's impressive. That stood out right out there from the gate. They 7 toss stretches, platform stretches, they drop 1. The other 6 are money, good. The tosses are floating right to where they want to be. There's no pressing, none of that. We have 6 back handspring ups. Those look pretty good. They just go to platform. I don't like that. Please pull something. Just going to platform teaches bad habits. I'm telling you right now, because you don't have to have a good grip to keep a platform in the air. That's my thought here. But they, like I said, the number's huge. There's 6 toss QPs. 2 of them are getting touched. I'm not a fan of that. 4 back handspring full up pyramids, and these are not bad. I mean, these are not like cash money, but these are pretty clean. They're not catching them perfectly at the top or any of that stuff, but they're catching them pretty close, pretty controlled. They don't look like they're doing something that they shouldn't be. They look comfortable and they look controlled. Cheers great, booming with energy, like it always is. Everything's going great. Second half they do this walk-in lib power low, and they do like a kick full down. And really at that point, they're only doing 4. So you're like, well, what's the point of doing that? There's 4. That's well below the number. This stunt is not about what it can do for your stunt score. Okay. They've already got all the juice they need. They did the 6 toss QPs. They did the 6 back handspring ups. They did 7 toss stretches. They did 3 sequences well above the number range. This right here, they've got a little jump sequence going on in the front. And then they're doing these 4 with a cook full down. This is a chance to pop the crowd. Good visual twisting dismount. That's what this is all about. It's to get energy into the crowd going into your pyramid without expending too much energy on your guys. Because there's no reason to do another stunt. There's no reason to load up 7 of something because you've already demonstrated that you're more than capable of doing these skills. Like, what's the point of doing 7 toss extensions? You've already done 7 toss stretches. There's no reason. They've hit every single area where they need to be. They got 2 super elites. They got the body position. There's no need to do anything else here. This is to pop the crowd and have the energy going forward. And that's exactly what it did. Great final pyramid. I don't care for the throwing and flipping and catching people in a crowd. I think that's all just jazz and BS. And it's, how do you score that? Like, it's just flipping and spinning into a cradle. It's not, I don't really know how that impacts your difficulty or anything like that. Yeah, it's hard, it's scary, but it's not like you're catching it to feet. You're not catching it to a skill. It's a transition. So I don't really like all those things. Lots of people are doing them. I just don't like them. But like I said, overall, I didn't have a problem with this. Looking at the scores, I thought McCracken was obviously the team to beat here. They for sure were the better team. This was undeniable. They had the difficulty and they had the size over everybody. They had the execution. This looks like McCracken's going to run with it. Okay, because like I said, Hudson did hit, and McCracken had one mistake. 2.1 points ahead. That's pretty good. Pretty good space. Now let's get into finals. This is where we're going to go. We're going to go with the team because there were a lot of teams that got in. I think 8 teams got in. But let's go to where these teams finished up. So obviously Bartow comes out in this reverse order for finals. They scored 89.1. They have a half a point deduction. They get 88.6. The big thing here for me when I was watching Bartow is that their timing was atrocious at times. When you look at they hit stunts well, really well. But when you look at dismounts and the timing on the dismounts, when they do their running tumbling section, I can't tell who's together. There's 8 people going to the front, 8 people going to the back, and they're all going at different times. And it looks bad. Like that hurt. Execution, spacing, timing, these things matter. And Bartow does not do those things well. And that was especially on case here. I thought that they had, they did 7 toss libs. They did the 5 hand in hands. They had these toe pitch arabesques, because I don't even know why you did those. It's assisted. It's just a body position. There's other ways to get into that. The pyramids were great. I thought they had really good pyramids. But overall, I thought like their execution was what killed. And their cheer killed me to watch. I'm not a big cheer guy anyway, but this cheer felt forever long. It kind of drug at times. I don't know if the energy was there throughout. Now I'm watching it on TV. I'm not there in person. Maybe in person is a different story, but on TV, this cheer did not come off the most exciting thing in the world to watch. Birmingham went next, and they had a rough go. They did not place in the top 4. I don't think they placed in the top 5. They had a little rough go, so they're out of the conversation. And then Bentonville comes up, and they scored 90.8. They have 2 points of deductions, again 88.8. I don't really know where these 2 points of deductions came from when I was first watching them. I would probably have to go back and watch, but this is another case of they did pretty similar to what they did before. They were pretty clean for the most part. I mean, they score lower here because of the deductions, but I mean, the raw score is higher than it was the previous time with the mistakes. I mean, overall, like I said, they were good. They had good numbers. They just didn't have enough of the difficulty to really be in that conversation. They obviously weren't too far out from it. Hudson came out next, and they had one drop for sure. A guy did a back handspring up, and it hit him in the chest, and he's like fighting to save it. And it comes down, and they must have picked up another deduction somewhere because they had 1.5 points in the deductions. They had a 91.6 raw, rounded it out to a 90.1 after their deductions. But overall, it was a good routine. I thought that they left the door open. Obviously, with that mistake, they needed to hit and be perfect in order to have a chance to win. It's kind of what I thought going into this. They didn't do that. But there was a lot of good stuff here. I think outside of the mistake, everything else was pretty solid. And then McCracken came out. They get through. They do the toss stretches. They're great. No drops here. The tumbling in the beginning is great. We go to do the back handspring ups. They drop 1 to the back handspring ups, which is not a huge deal. Like I said, they had 1 drop before. This one's going to hurt a little bit more, obviously, because you're dropping in the elite sequence, so that's going to impact your difficulty score just a tad bit for your elites. And then we're going to transition. They did the toss cupies. They hit those. Their pyramids well. The back handspring full-ups. Everything's going great. We go into the cheer, and doing the, I think it was the MCHS. They did a walk into hands and dropped one of the walk into hands in the cheer. And that's a death sentence. Dropping in the cheer is unforgivable in judges' eyes. And I think that's to me is the story here. And I have seen these score sheets, so I know for a fact that this is what happened. That drop in the cheer killed them. If they had dropped anywhere else outside of the cheer, I think they would have been fine, as long as it wasn't like a pyramid. If it had been like a one-off stunt or something like that, I think they would have been fine. I think that would have been, I think they still would have won. But the drop in the cheer was detrimental, because a drop in the cheer hurts you. You're not getting really judged on difficulty, but now your execution's off. Now your ability to lead the crowd's off because people are looking at you. Your energy's off because the momentum just took a prick. So you're really getting hit all these places. Plus you're getting hit with a deduction. Cheer is the worst place to drop. And, everything else in this routine was fantastic. outside of the two mistakes, the back handspring up drop and the walk into hands drop, everything was absolutely perfect. But it was enough, in my opinion, to after finals was over, before awards, one of the assistants, Raymond, he texted me and he's like, "Do you think that we did enough?" And I said, "I don't know. If you had just dropped the one, like I said, like I've just been saying, you just dropped the one, I'd feel okay." I said, "It just depends." But in my honest opinion, I thought even with the mistakes, I thought McCracken was still better than everybody. I did think that even with two mistakes, the size, the difficulty, it was too much for everybody else to handle. That was my opinion going forward. But I've opened myself to this idea. Mistakes in the cheer are detrimental. So when we go to awards, I'm not too shocked here. Fourth place, we get Bartow, 88.6 after the deductions. Bentonville, 88.8. Second place was McCracken. They got an 89.9. So that's about a 3.1 drop from where they were in finals. And then Hudson gets the win with a 90.1. So there's a 0.2 difference here between Hudson and McCracken. So let me tell you what happened. There was a conversation. Hudson or McCracken. That was the conversation. And now I have seen the score sheets, so I know. McCracken won every single category except for the cheer. Why? Because they had the drop. They said they got blown out in the cheer. All the effort that they made to win stunts, to win tumbling, to win execution, to win all these things was all blown up by the mistake in the cheer, which I don't have a problem with that because they've been pretty consistent about that in the past. Mistakes in the cheer are detrimental to your ability to be successful. It's the easiest portion of your routine, or it should be. You're just trying to lead the crowd in an energetic, fun, and creative way. So you can't have mistakes there, and that's exactly what happened. I was very upset, obviously. I don't really have a dog in the fight or anything like that anymore. There's a few kids that I still coach that were there. They're obviously done now, or they're wrapping it up. So these are the last of the kids that I coached that were there, and I feel really bad for them. I think that if I had stayed and finished out my tenure, this probably would have been the point where I hopped off too, and I think I would have been fine with that. Obviously, this performance was rougher because it was in their hands. It's not like somebody was better than them. They had control of their own fate, and they didn't do that. I haven't talked to anybody other than Raymond at this point. I probably will eventually. It just sucks. I know that these teams, it's not just them. Obviously, I have a personal connection with them. But when, you put in all that time, you put in a lot of that effort, and it's the little things. And it's a moment of not being focused because walking hands is the easiest stunt that you can do. And it was just not being focused, not paying attention, getting wrapped up or thinking it was too easy or keeping your eye off the ball and getting complacent. Because when you stop thinking about it, you stop focusing on it, these are the things that happen. And it may have been a small error. You may not have even known that it was going to happen. But it was just, it's that mentality stuff that we always go back and we talk about. Being focused for the entire 2.5 minutes and not 2 minutes and 29 seconds. And in this case, it was 2 minutes and 28 seconds. Great program. I think, based on, if McCracken can continue to recruit guys, I definitely think that they're going to have the potential going forward. I think they're only graduating 2 top girls, so you're going to have numbers, you're going to have size, you're going to have ability and potential. Now, they're losing a lot of guys, so it'll be interesting to see what they look like going forward. I still have a lot of faith in that program. It's still great coaches, still great staff, still great alumni. All my boys still come back and help them. So I think in the future, there's a lot to learn here. It's been a while since, McCracken hit last year at Nationals, but 20, 25, 23, 22, 19. Those routines don't hit. 16, 15, 14. Those routines don't hit. 3 hits in 12 years of Nationals. 3. You've got to be able to hit your routines. You've got to be able to do that in order to be in that conversation, to have a national. And like I said, even with all that, they were a lot better than people. It was a silly mistake, hurt them, but obviously looking forward, that's something that you've got to make adjustments to. Let's go to the other large co-ed Division II, and this is a 2-team race. This took place on Sunday morning, the semifinals right before large Coed D1 finals. And there were a few teams in here. I'm really only going to talk about two here. It's going to be Graves County and Brother Martin. Now, there's about a 10-point gap between second place and third place coming out, or it may have been bigger than that. So this is a two-team race. It's Graves County and it's Brother Martin. I can't really remember who went first coming out of this. I remember watching both the routines. I mean, Graves County does another silly thing. You know, they drop a walk into hands in the cheer. Everything else in the routine was pretty good outside of that. They did 5 pull-ups in the beginning, 5 pull-up libs. They did 5 front handspring ups. There's one point where they do like 3 toss libs. I don't know why. And then there's a bigger area that I hadn't seen where they do like a bunch of like 7 toss platforms, open up to extension, go down. You should just do toss extensions. I don't know why we're doing all the platform crap. You could have just done toss extensions. I don't know why you do all that, other than if you're just trying to eat up counts and time. But just do a toss extension down lib. It's not helping. Good pyramids. They had the cartwheel ups, the full rounds. The last pyramid's really good. I mean, there's a lot of good creativity in this. Tumbling is really low on their end. That's one thing that I noticed. Like, you got a lot of guys standing in the back of the mat that aren't throwing a standing tuck, or, I'm not saying everybody has to have a round off tuck or back handspring tuck, but like your standing tuck numbers should be a lot higher than that. And I thought that was an area where it was going to hurt them. Brother Martin was banging. The pyramid that they opened up with is unbelievable. That back handspring up, rewind, it's 2 flips. I don't know how it's legal. I don't understand that at all. But obviously it is, because they got away with it. So that would have been 5 points of pyramid. So it's definitely legal. But absolutely incredible. I would never try something like that. I can't. Absolutely not. I think that's insane. But man, they hit them pretty well. I mean, one of them struggled on the left side, but the other 2 hit at the top really well. And then a lot of good stunts from there on out. Big numbers in their back handspring ups, big numbers in their full ups, toss libs. I mean, they did a lot of stuff well. A lot of tumbling, great jumps. Pyramids are absolutely impressive. They did 4. Like I said, when I look at this routine, this was undeniably to me the best routine. Okay, I thought this was the best routine of any co-ed team. When you look at the pyramids, when you look at the tumbling, when you look at the stunts, and you look at the size, I thought Brother Martin was the best team all weekend from a routine perspective. They did have a drop in the semifinals. I think they dropped one of the back handspring ups, but they came out with 4 points of deductions, and I was like, buddy, where did those come from? I'm assuming that they got hit for some kind of legality or a technicality, because they should have had the one for the handspring drop, but the other 3, they had to be some kind of technicality, some kind of something. It had to be something, because I didn't understand it. So coming out of this, it was Graves County was in first place with an 89.3, and Brother Martin was in second place with an 88.3. And I could not believe that 100%. Like I said, the legality kind of threw me off. That 3-point mystery deduction kind of threw me off. So without that, I mean, it's pretty obvious to me that Brother Martin is the best team. I think there's a huge gap in the score, even with the deductions. You go back and you look at the raw scores. I mean, there's a 2-point difference here. This is Brother Martin's, but the question is going to be what's going to happen. It's hitting, it's execution, all this stuff. Both of them had pretty good performances. The question was going to be, could you do it in finals? This is going to be a little bit closer than I thought it was going to be, which is good. But Brother Martin's got size. I think Graves County's got more difficulty. Front handspring ups harder than the back handspring. They both have the full ups. I think Graves County has a little bit on the difficulty edge as far as stunts, but Brother Martin has to have it in pyramids. Undeniable. And then the numbers that Brother Martin put up would have for sure given them any kind of advantage over Graves. I mean, we're talking like there were times we're throwing up almost double the amount of stunts that Graves was. But let's go into finals. So 4 teams got into finals. The other 2 teams that went were once again out of finals were about 10 points behind these 2. So Brother Martin goes first, and I mean they have a pretty good performance. I know they had one mistake here as well, I believe, but everything else looks so good. The pyramids hit again. The full ups are pretty. Back handspring ups, I think they lost one here. But overall, they did so much stuff well. The energy was great. No reason to be disappointed. But they got hit with all those deductions again. They had 4 points in deductions again, which, it's kind of crazy. Whatever it was you were supposed to change, you clearly didn't. And I don't know why you didn't. You had a whole day. So, like I said, I would be interested to know what that was, because looking at that, I don't know. It's not something that I would typically dish out to somebody. But that's an interesting. Maybe it was a routine length. Obviously, maybe that's something like that, and you can't butcher your music. But I don't know. They've been coming to nationals for a long time. I just don't feel like they would do something like that. But yeah, so interesting to think about, interesting to look at. And then Graves County comes out, gets to the cheer, great, full ups hit. I'm like, okay. And then they drop one full up on the far right end. I was like, okay, one mistake. May not be they had one mistake before. This is not in the cheer. So, it's a toss up because you're going to do a little bit better in the cheer, but your stunt difficulties and your execution is going to get hit now. Front handspring ups are good. They come to the toss platform open to extension down limb. Should be toss extension. And one guy, I don't know what he did. He snaked it really bad and did not catch her at all. And she face plants on the mat. And she lays there for a second, which I would too. I would be trying to think about, a lot of things at this point. It's bad enough to make a mistake in finals. Get the blue mat special buffet is not what you want. Unfortunately, this girl did. I would have had their ass on a platter after this competition. I understand that it's already bad enough they lost, but you can't drop people on their face. You can't drop people in a way that makes it look like you shouldn't even be doing this skill and expect it to go well for you. You just can't. Rough break, same guy for both the mistakes. The rest of the routine's good. They get through everything else. The pyramids are great. The ending is awesome, but obviously these mistakes are big, and the drop to the ground where she lands on her face, that's a compromising drop. That's a bigger deduction. That's not just a 1, that's a 2-point deduction. So Graves County will round it up with getting 3 points of deductions, and the awards will go pretty simple. Graves County came in second place with a 87.1, and Brother Martin came in first with an 88.5. So it was about a 1.4 difference between these two teams. Brother Martin didn't have the legality deduction. It would have been even bigger than that. So this is another one where, I don't necessarily know if Graves County knew it at the time, but when they walked out on that mat, they had a chance to win, and they didn't. To just hit your routine, control your destiny, control your narrative. The possibility was in their hands, and that's hard to deal with. Like I said, for me, I think a lot going forward, I would just focus on getting bigger. They did well. Don't get me wrong. I mean, the difficulty's unbelievable, phenomenal, but they need numbers too. I think you can get away with doing like 5, like the front handspring ups or something like that, but like you really need to have good numbers. I know 5 is the minimum requirement, but people are not just going to do 5. That's going to be the thing here. People are going to throw 6 and 7 and 8. Because I think at one point Brother Martin put up 9 toss extensions. So size is going to be there. You're going to have to put up the numbers. Because if not, these other teams are going to, and they're going to exploit you from doing that. Plus, Brother Martin had the difficulty all the way around. This was not a shocker, obviously, but it'll be really, really interesting to see what this division is going to look like going forward. Brother Martin's picked up a lot of steam the last several years. Graves County's kind of back and forth sometimes. Sometimes they're outstanding. Sometimes they have some rough performances. The division, what it's going to look like, you have an idea. I think finding a way to get those guys to tumble is absolutely essential, whether it's a standing tuck or something. Finding ways to put more stunts in the air, getting more girls, whatever you got to do to, to grow. And they know how to do that. I'm not telling them anything they don't know. John and them are outstanding coaches. They know exactly what to do. But that's what the focus is going to be going forward, I'm sure. But that is going to be a wrap here for this Nationals. I'm going today to go see the new Captain America movie. I'm a big Captain America fan, no matter what color he is. I'm a fan of Captain America. So I'm excited to go and watch that today. Get this video chopped up and edited and get it posted, hopefully, in the next couple days. I just want to finish with, my food for thought is that I love the places that I came from. I'm happy to be a part of all the things I've gotten to be a part of. And, it's rough. even though I'm not there, it's rough to watch them struggle or fail. But you have to remember too that it's part of the journey. It's part of the growth. I don't know what goes on every single day, but I know that I love these places, and I know that I love these athletes. Even though I don't know a lot of them, I still care about them. They wear the same colors that I did once upon a time. They have the same names on their chest that I had once upon a time. Whether I'm there or whether I'm not, it doesn't change the fact that I want to see these teams be successful. Obviously, this was hard, but, I'm still proud, an alumni of both these programs. I'm still proud of the performances and the routines and the insane difficulty, the unbelievable energy and the execution and everything that they put on display. Everything that we've always meant to be a part of. When you graduate, when you leave, when you move on, you always hope that people would take what we give them and continue to expand it. And when you watch both of these routines, you can't say that didn't happen. I'm not there anymore. I'm not a part of the process, but I still love it. I still respect it. I still want it to keep going. I helped build part of it. I took part in making these things and what they are. I don't want to see them fall. I don't want to see them crumble. I don't want to have to see them learn stupid lessons. I'm proud of these kids. I'm proud of what they did. Was it perfect? No. But they took the biggest risks of anybody in the history of any of our programs did. They took all the chances. They took all the risks. They proved that they were capable. One bad day doesn't change the way that I look at either one of these teams, the way that I look at either one of these programs. Everything that you do to hope that your program can be at this level one day. You don't need a trophy. You don't need a banner or a jacket to be memorable. And both of these teams are memorable. And I'll continue to watch, and I'll continue to support, and I'll continue to be invested in the future and everything that happens next. A couple bad days doesn't change all the love that I have for all this. And it never has. But that is a wrap for today. Thank you very much. I hope that you enjoyed our review. I hope that you have any questions, please feel free to reach out to me. Thank you so much. Like I said, I will try to get together quickly and get these episodes together. The one with Caleb where I sit down, we'll pick up talking about the 2018. I am going to do the other half of the all-girl teams that I did not get to cover today. And, we'll just continue to move forward, continue to look forward, and continue to learn and grow. And then we'll wrap up some of these things, probably play around with some other things. I'm getting to the point where I'm almost done with my history lesson. I've got 18, 19, 20, 21, and 22 left. So not too many, 5 left. And obviously once I sit down with Caleb, we'll record 2 of them out and get those knocked out. So once again, just thank you so much for your support. Thank you so much for continuing to listen to me. Continue to work, continue to grind. I hope that you learned something. If you didn't, please feel free to reach out and ask me questions. Once again, thank you so much. Please like and subscribe. Follow me on Instagram. Follow me on TikTok. And I will see you guys in the future on Memoirs of the Father.